inspiring. We were definitely inspired by a lot of the work that was done in the UK, and as you well know, we're more than happy to collaborate and contribute and work together. It's definitely for the benefit of everyone. The second speaker is Mr. David Ko. David Ko is the Commissioner of Cybersecurity and Chief Executive of the Cybersecurity Agency, the CSA, in Singapore. He is also the Deputy Secretary and Defense Cyber Chief of the Ministry of Defense. In his role, he leads Singapore's effort to provide dedicated and centralized oversight of national cybersecurity functions in policy, capacity development, operation, and international engagement. Before his current appointment, David held various command and staff appointments at the Singaporean Air Force and the Ministry of Defense. He holds a master's degree in public administration from Harvard University and a bachelor's degree in electronics engineering from King's College, London. He's also a great friend of Israel. He's half Israeli, I guess, by now. So, David, my privilege to have you here.
Thank you very much. First of all, Boker Tov, and I apologize. My background is from the security services, so I can't be like Kieran, Hudi, or Mani and perform on stage. I'm more comfortable hiding behind the podium. Already, it's an achievement for me to be able to speak to such a large audience, so please bear with me. Thank you very much, Hudi, Itzik Ben Israel, for inviting me and to be here again at the Cyberweek and to address all of you. I am the head of the Cybersecurity Agency. This is an agency that's very similar to the Israel National Cyber Directorate. In fact, the original ideas of setting up this centralized agency came from Professor Ben Israel when he came to speak to our leaders in Singapore. Now, I want to share a little bit about what we're doing in Singapore and how we think that international cooperation is essential. Now, before I go into the international approach that we have, let me share a little bit about my country for those of you who have not so familiar or may not have had the opportunity to come to Singapore. Singapore is a tiny nation in Southeast Asia. You in Israel say that Israel is a small country, but Singapore, we are tiny. We are approximately 3% of the size of Israel, but with 65% of Israel's population. So later on, if we interact and I stand a little bit too close, please bear with me because I'm not used to having so much space. Now, like Israel, we are also surrounded by much larger neighbors. Our southern neighbor, for example, Indonesia, is almost 3,000 times larger than Singapore. So given our status as a little red dot on the map, Singapore believes that security of any form is fundamental to our independence and continued prosperity. We place a high importance on our ability to defend ourselves from threats within and without, both in the kinetic world as well as in cyberspace. Secondly, Singapore is a highly connected country with a fast-growing digital economy. Nearly 91% of Singaporean households have internet access, while Singaporeans have on average 2 cell phones each. I don't personally quite understand this. I can only do one thing at a time. So I don't quite understand this business about 2 cell phones. Maybe it's for all the ladies who can multitask more effectively than I can. Our strong infrastructure and collective willingness to embrace almost anything digital has led Singapore to be ranked first on the World Economic Forum's Network Readiness Index in 2018. This measures how well an economy is using information and communications technology, ICT, to boost competitiveness and well-being. Going forward, the pace and scale of Singapore's connectivity and digitalization is only set to intensify as our initiatives under our Smart Nation program take root. The Smart Nation program sets out a vision to harness digital and smart technologies to build a future Singapore. But we can't have a thriving digital economy or claim to be a smart nation if our systems are open and vulnerable. So cybersecurity is an essential or even existential to Singapore's future. Now, it's only been 2 years since I last attended Cyberweek in 2016, but much has changed in the cyber landscape since then. 2017, as we all know, saw many high-profile international cyber attacks across the globe. The most notorious of which was WannaCry, which has been discussed, more than 200,000 users in 150 countries. As Igal Una said yesterday, winter is coming. So even in Singapore, winter is coming. And this, we see, is just the beginning. Cybercrime continues to be highly attractive due to a combination of three factors: low cost to launch an attack, low risk of getting caught, and yet potentially high gain. This has been compounded by a democratization of means, where cybercriminals no longer have to be constrained by their own technical capabilities, because they can now purchase cyber weapons off the black market in the deep and dark web. Going forward, we can only expect this issue of cybercriminal activity to be further exacerbated by the low security and increasingly large attack surface that IoT devices present. Making matters worse, nation-states are also becoming an increasingly active threat agent group. According to the findings by the European Union's Agency for Network and Information Security, ENISA, nation-states account for more than 20% of incidents in 2017. However, given their advanced capabilities, these attacks are often difficult to identify and defend against, and such their actual activity is likely to be much higher than this 20% number. Moreover, with nations rapidly arming themselves and other groups for a cyber battlefield, the possibility of cyber weapons leaking increases significantly. The WannaCry attack is a prime example of this, with the malware behind the attack allegedly stolen from the US NSA. These trends highlight the increasing dangerous threat landscape. But cyber is also boundaryless and asymmetric in nature. Anyone with a laptop has the means to cause a disproportionate amount of damage to critical information infrastructure around the world. So cyber, unlike the physical or the kinetic world, is not bounded by geography. Countries must be prepared to defend themselves against world-class attackers from anywhere in the world. This is a huge challenge for small countries, this is something which we are not used to dealing with, conceptually, capability-wise, or even resource-wise. Cybersecurity is a team sport, one in which international collaboration and mutual understanding is required to forge a safer cyberspace for all to enjoy. As a small country, highly connected, Singapore believes in the importance of a rules-based international order for cyberspace that is based on applicable international laws and the adoption of voluntary norms of state behavior. Singapore firmly believes in partnering other countries like the UK, US, Israel, as well as international and regional organizations to coordinate and enhance our collective response to cybercrime and threats. However, establishing such an international order is a tall order. For our part, Singapore not only leverages international platforms such as the United Nations to drive international cooperation, but also regional platforms, in particular ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. This stems from our recognition that other ASEAN states are our immediate neighbors, and a weak cybersecurity posture not only leaves them vulnerable to cyber attacks, but exposes Singapore to cyber attacks coming from their infrastructure. Moreover, ICT presents a great opportunity for ASEAN and its 650 million people to grow and to lift the people out of poverty. A rising tide lifts all ships, and that includes Singapore. However, this has to be underpinned by cybersecurity. Otherwise, there will be 650 more million people who will be exposed to cyber attacks and cybercrime. Through these platforms, we seek to promote international cooperation in several ways. First, Singapore seeks to promote dialogue to focus the attention of the international community on key cyber issues. Singapore has launched our own Singapore International Cyberweek, or SICW, to serve as a platform for regional and global cyber leaders to come together to forge partnerships and engage in critical dialogue on cybersecurity. Last year, the SICW attracted more than 7,000 attendees, including policymakers, industry experts, and NGOs from close to 50 countries. In particular, the International Cyber Leaders Symposium featured a robust panel discussion between cyber thought leaders on the challenges of implementing the norms of responsible cyber state behavior. Next, recognizing a clear set of cyber norms would help cultivate a degree of predictability and assurance to state behavior and the use of cyberspace. Singapore works closely with our international partners to identify and adopt norms of state behavior. Earlier this year, under Singapore's chairmanship, ASEAN leaders issued the first ever ASEAN Leaders Statement on Cybersecurity Cooperation at the 32nd ASEAN Summit. In addition to highlighting the need for closer regional cybersecurity coordination, this document tasked the relevant ministers from all ASEAN countries to make progress on identifying a concrete list of voluntary, practical norms of state behavior in cyberspace that ASEAN can work together towards adopting and implementing, taking reference from the 2015 report on the UNGGE, the United Nations Group of Governmental Experts. The statement itself built on the seminal progress from the second ASEAN Ministerial Conference on Cybersecurity in 2017, where the ASEAN ICT and cybersecurity ministers and senior officials endorsed a chairman's statement highlighting the importance of closer coordination on regional efforts and to move forward discussions on the adoption of basic operational and voluntary cyber norms of behavior in ASEAN to guide responsible use of ICT. Norms, however, have to be complemented with confidence-building measures in order to build a culture of trust that can encourage the adherence of norms and reduce the risk of misperception and conflict, as well as to foster closer cooperation. Recognizing this, ASEAN Regional Forum Intersessional Meeting on ICT Security, co-chaired by Singapore, Japan, and Malaysia, has been established to look into confidence-building measures and other cybersecurity-related topics. However, just simply having trust among countries who are willing to adhere to norms is insufficient. A chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So robust capacity building must be undertaken to ensure that each country has the ability not only to ensure its own domestic cybersecurity, but also contribute to regional and international cybersecurity, including their means to meet the obligations under the norms. This helps ensure that no country inadvertently serves as a safe haven for cyber criminals or launchpads for attacks. For example, Singapore's $10 million ASEAN Cyber Capacity Program, launched in 2016, continues to provide cyber capacity building training across both technical and policy aspects of cybersecurity, partnering domain experts from government, industry, academia, NGOs. These workshops have trained 120 director or deputy director level participants from ASEAN countries in areas such as critical information infrastructure protection, norms of state behavior, and how international law applies in cyberspace. Lastly, Singapore works with international and regional partners to counter cybercrime and threats. In addition to working with ASEAN member states to coordinate regional approach on cybercrime, Singapore hosts the Interpol Global Center for Innovation, provides global training and coordination of international operations on cybercrime for all Interpol members countries. Just last year, an Interpol-led operation run out of the center in Singapore brought together 7 ASEAN states, various industry experts to identify nearly 9,000 command and control C2 servers and hundreds of compromised websites, including government portals across the ASEAN region. Well, I've come to the end of this sharing. I hope that what I've shared a little bit about what Singapore does to foster international cooperation to enhance our collective cybersecurity has been useful. Before I hand over, I'd like to thank INCD and the Cyberweek team for providing the world with a platform to bring together industry leaders, academics, policymakers from all over the world to come together and share and exchange our ideas on cybersecurity. Thank you very much. Singapore will be hosting the 3rd Singapore International Cyber Week on the 18th to the 20th of September this year. So all of you, please, you're welcome to Singapore as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. It's been a fascinating presentation, and David, you're way too modest regarding your presentation skills. And I'm really looking forward to being with you again on the same stage next week in Singapore. I apologize, there were originally supposed to be 2 more speakers in this session, Mr. Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister, and Nadav Argaman, head of the Israeli Security Agency, the Shin Bet. They were unable to come for different reasons, so I apologize for that. But instead you earned a 30-minute coffee break until 11 a.m., so everything bad comes with some good in it. The next session at 11 will be led by Yaniv Arel from Delhi MC. Fascinating session, definitely something to look forward to. Thank you very much.